Hi there, it's Jessie here, and a very warm welcome to this channel. Holy smokes! I wonder how you are all faring after that full moon eclipse. Well, was it solar eclipse? It was full moon, solar eclipse. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How are you? Are you doing all right? Oh my goodness. I'm doing all right today and yesterday, but last week I was thrown into depression. Like, I was at the bottom of the river. I was not floating. I was not keeping afloat. I was horribly depressed last week. My goodness, I haven't felt like that in a while. I have my bad days, but this was something else. This was waking up not wanting to be here. And I'm actually going to talk about my process as best I can, but I want to remind us all that we only really ever understand somebody at our own level of perception. And it's often why we misunderstand people. You know, I was with two friends last night, and I said something sort of quietly at the end of a conversation, and one of my friends heard one thing and repeated it. And then my other friend corrected him, saying, "No, she said that." But they were both saying it with such certainty, like that was the right thing to say. You know, he was like, "Ah." I think he heard surrender. And then my friend heard, like, "No, she didn't say surrender. She said, it's perfect," or "that's right," or something. And I was like, I didn't say either of those things. I said something else. And then it's funny, isn't it? Because we hear what we want to hear. And that what everyone heard was what they wanted to hear or heard in that moment. And I didn't even say that. I said something else. And I just thought, I actually said, what's the point in us talking to each other? We're only really hearing what we want to hear anyway. And we can really listen, but it's still filtered through our perception and our understanding and belief systems. So I do question why we talk to each other sometimes. But it's not always like that. But it was like that last night. And yeah, when we watch anyone, especially online, and I'm sure that you have some feeling like you know me, some of you do know me, hello. But the ones that have just met me online and have followed for a while, there's that feeling, isn't it? I get it with people on the internet. If I watch them for a certain amount of time, I feel their energy in my life. I can be going about my day and I hear what they would say, and I wonder if people get that with me, and it feels like we've met people. And I watched, I think it was Teal Swan, it was like a quick reel where she was saying like our bodies and our brains haven't caught up with the level of advancement in technology that we're currently experiencing. Like the body takes more time to adapt than the amount of time technology has been around and how quickly it's now in almost every facet of our lives every day for a lot of us. And, she was saying like with the internet, it's our brain believes we've met people we haven't met, that we've seen things we haven't seen. And I feel that. I felt that with people on YouTube. I felt like I know them very well. And then I thought people probably feel that with me, like they know me because I show up a lot. And if you watch it, and I don't know, maybe you don't get that. That's something I experience, and it's very odd. So I'll caveat my message with it's good. I think self-awareness is good for us to be aware of the perception and our belief systems, to just know that that's the filter they're passing through when anyone's saying anything. So I will be talking about sensitive topics of mental health, and even as far as like unaliving oneself. So if that's a trigger for you or you don't want to hear it, not your video. And if you can just be open-minded about listening to somebody else's experience, and then maybe, stick around. But of course, when we're triggered by what somebody says, especially if we don't know them, it's normally our own stuff. And that's all right. It's not about, I always question, like it's good that we're aware that people have triggers and we try not to trigger them when it's not the time or appropriate. But also we can't go around trying not to trigger anyone ever, by like censoring ourselves so it doesn't trigger. If we get triggered by someone, that is an opportunity to realize something unresolved within us. That's it. It's not about the other person. Of course it feels like that. Our mind goes, ugh, they've done something wrong because now I'm feeling uncomfortable, and tell them to stop talking, or you've got to warm, or whatever it is. And it's very sensitive and it's nuanced, on the internet, because we're all in touch with each other whenever, immediately, if we want to be. And there's something odd about that, like when we don't know each other, So I was in the throes of depression. And to give you some context, right, my grandmother took her own life. And I believe my great-grandmother did as well. So some context, that it's in my very blood and veins that taking one's life is a solution. All right. Now, I've dealt with this thought form all of my life, not all the time in my life, but it comes and it goes, this thought form. And when I'm feeling particularly low, it comes. And I have a twin sister, and she experiences the same thing. So I believe this is an unresolved thought form, maybe emotional entity that in the ancestral line that's yet to be resolved. So me and my sister experience it from time to time, and it's very loud and it's very invasive and it's very convincing. And I have learned to, when it's come to me all of my life, I've known I'd never do that. I wouldn't even consider it as an option. It's like I was aware that this was in me and I have to do something with it, but I'm not doing that. But last week, I'm feeling awful. And I went and sat by the river, and it was the sunrise, and it was very peaceful. And it was honestly a beautiful, magical morning. And I was being totally tormented by my mind. And I spoke to the river, and I heard this voice, and it said, well, you don't have to be here. You don't have to be here. I know it's actually an option to leave. And I'm not saying this as like, this isn't a suggestion for anyone. This isn't advice in any way. I'm sharing my experience, what happened to me personally. And the sense of relief that came when I allowed that thought to be heard. Because I really do think it's a thing whenever we resist something like very strongly upfront. If somebody says something you don't believe in, like it could be a belief. Like I do it quite a lot because I'm very in touch with the spiritual aspect of being. I'm very in touch with that, and we all have that. Not all, some in touch more than others. And I'm not even saying I'm like very, very in touch, but I'm somewhat in touch more than a lot of people I'm around. And so I'll often share something that's feels inherently true to me, and that's just like made up nonsense to someone else. Like they can't. So when I share some things, people immediately go, oh, that's ridiculous. How could you even possibly believe that? That's impossible. And I think anything where we immediately, like, we can't even consider discussing it hypothetically. Somebody says something that is completely wacky and crazy to you, and where is our curiosity and our open mind to go, what is it in your life experience that has led you to believe that? I'm curious. I don't, but what is it? And hypothetically consider something as a possibility. But when we're like, oh, no, that's not true. You're crazy for thinking that. You're delusional. If it's that instant, I wonder if we can take a pause and just think, this is something I don't understand. I think, are we on? Yeah. And potentially there's something I could learn here, but the only way we're ever going to expand our truth is by listening to somebody earnestly. Not that we need to be convinced by them, but not that they're immediately wrong, and just open and just hear the words they have to say. And maybe, like the thing I was saying at the beginning, that we hear what we want to hear. Maybe when we're listening very openly, even if we don't at the end of the conversation have the same belief system, which is okay. It still might touch something and change a perspective we have even in another facet of our lives. But I had a lot of resistance to this thought coming in because I just refused to even acknowledge that as an option. And of course, anything you resist persists. But of course, I wasn't going to take that kind of action. I just wasn't. But last week, I allowed myself to consider it. And I got such a wave of relief. Everything I was worried about, all the torments of the mind, relaxed. And it was very, very curious because I still knew that I wasn't going to do anything. But I liked to give this part of me, or whatever it was, the opportunity to be heard and just given some space. It's what it needed to feel relief, this part. Whether it's in me, of me, outside of me that enters in, I don't know. But it moves around. And it's not with me anymore. So I can talk about it a lot more objectively. But it was very curious. I was talking to my friend about it, and she knows what it's like to have these kinds of thoughts. And I noticed I kept bringing it up with her, like each time I was on the phone, and it made me think, am I serious about this? Or what is it that's making me bring this up in each conversation? Because it was actually my friend that just said, wow. And it was just one word, but it was said in a tone where she was taking it seriously, and there was concern, and there was something in her tone that touched me, that made me realize, wait a minute, Jess, what am I doing? I know that I can have these kinds of thought experiments and play with this and see what's in there. And I'm almost certain that God puts me through many experiences, even if it's just for a few hours, of states of consciousness, that when I come out, I have a deeper empathy for people who are in that state of consciousness. And I'm pretty sure one day in the future, I'm going to be a great teacher because of all of the things that I've experienced, even if it was just for an afternoon of, I know the sense of relief that comes when you choose the option to just quit. I know that. And then, so what it taught me is I had this option. I had two options. It was like, wow, I could leave this planet. I could just go. I could just shirk myself from the heavy weight of responsibility that I feel, which is to be alive. Because it is a responsibility, at least in my experience. I don't feel like I can just live my life for me and create a life that's perfect for me and wonderful when I know there is so much suffering and injustice happening every day and every moment. I feel we're responsible for each other. We're responsible for ourselves, of course, first and foremost. But once we've taken care of that, then we're responsible for the others around us, particularly those that don't know, were never taught, given the support to know how to look after themselves. So we got this to look after, and then it doesn't stop there in my understanding. There is a duty to then take care of those around you once your cup's full. And, I personally witness many, many people not taking any responsibility for other people. It's not even, we're raised, at least in Western culture, in the UK where I'm from, it's very individualistic. You look out for yourself, or you look out for yourself and your loved ones, but, that to everyone else. And it makes me deeply, deeply sad. So I think I overcompensate by maybe taking on even more responsibility than is my part. We all have a part. We're all responsible for each other. But when I see a real lack of that, generally speaking, it gets me down because it made me want to give up. I'm like, what's the point? What am I trying so hard for? To make this world a much more beautiful, harmonious place to live in? Why do I could just give up. I could just leave it to the rest, I'm out. When I seriously considered that as an option, I was at a crossroads. I could do that. And I'm actually was strangely detached from the emotion of that. Of course, the thought experiment went on, and I thought about my loved ones, and my goodness, I felt responsible for their experience if I were to do such a thing, and I wouldn't do it because of that. And then, of course, there was even, and I'll just be completely honest here about a shadow side of me, there was even part of I was feeling so wronged by certain people in my life that it was like a vengeance thing. It was like, this is your fault. That really shocked me, that really shocked me that I had that capacity that to behave in that way. It's all right. It's just not, I'm not totally on board with that aspect of myself that would go to that extreme to teach somebody a lesson because of my own pain. Like it's not how I wish to show up in the world. But just for full transparency, that was playing into it too. I let everything come in. And why this part or this, whatever it was, felt like this was the best idea. So I had to really explore it. But what it made me realize was I got a choice point then. Either I do quit, like, just get out of here, Jess. If you're going to live half-hearted and not bother and like have a closed heart and just mediocre, like you see a lot of people doing, which isn't probably fair. I know some people are really trying. And come on, guys, let's keep going. We got this. Thank you for your work. On the good days. And yeah, I wanted to leave. And then it was like, okay, Jessie, so either you do that, go on then, that's an option, go on then, or I choose life and I commit to life wholeheartedly, which is taking care, like being responsible for myself and then being responsible for everyone around me, and like just to be at service, to play my part, my little part in creating a world with less suffering. And I'm not saying no suffering, because of course we're humans and we have the full range of emotions and it's beautiful, we feel them all. But for me, there's a lot of needless suffering. And yeah, we could minimize that, I think. I really do believe we could minimize it. And is also one last thing, this whole thing has got me thinking, because I was a few days ago, I've made quite a few videos and I'm finding it difficult to upload because I'm worried about this message being misunderstood or making people worry when they don't need to. When I like to explore everything in my experience of being human, and sometimes it's very dark. Don't know why I said it like that. So I didn't want to worry anyone, and I don't want it, but whatever, it needs to come off my chest because I can't make any other video till I've got past this hump. I've realized that something in me needs to express this and put it on the internet before I can move on. And it's just how I operate at the moment for some reason. If I choose to be here, I've got to choose life, and I've got to commit to myself and to how I want the world to be. That was it. And I was getting really moral about it. I was getting really moral about life, like there's certain acts we shouldn't do because they're anti-life. And we as humans should be here nurturing and supporting life in every way that we can, and being responsible for ourselves, each other, and the environment and nature in every way that we can. But battery's low, so I'll start wrapping it up. And I was so pro anti-life because there's certain acts that we can do that's seemingly mindless in the moment that can create huge damage to the growth, especially to our children who are still growing and developing, can really, really stunt their growth. I think a lot of us experience that. And then there's quite a long time to sort of reverse the effects of such a simple, simple's not the right word, but a small momentary act can take years to undo. And I think because I experienced something like that, I'm trying to fight for that, no one ever experiencing something like that. But I have recently discovered, for the astrologers out there, that my black moon Lilith is in the 8th house, which has been quite fascinating. So it got me thinking, even looking at astrology, and there's certain places and points and things that we are going to experience that are deep wounds. So it's not about avoiding or creating a world where we don't, because then where would the energy of transformation be? Like, to have transformation, you need to have some kind of defect, some kind of mistake in the natural order of things for it to sort of transform into something new. And I'm a big fan of the energy of transformation. So I've had to rethink really what I feel in that, yes, educate each other to the best that we can of the lessons that we've learned. But people will always make mistakes, and how can we remedy them and then transform, because we need transformation. And my last little thought, if I'm articulating this well at all, is that it's, I guess, always like how extreme we want to go, isn't it? I feel like if we tip the scales so far in one direction, its opposite energy to bring back balance will be as extreme. And maybe that's kind of, we're all transforming at the moment. I believe humanity and the planet, and it's happening inside of us and outside of us. And there's this big transformation happening, but it's happening in a very extreme way, because we sort of tip the scales so far in how lost and unconscious we all got, that it's like happening so extreme. And I think we can live in a world where we still experience duality and mistake and transformation we can still experience these energies, but maybe in less extreme way, if that's what we want. I think it's what I want, so I'll share that with you all, and that's how I feel about it. Maybe some of you really like it being super extreme. What do you reckon? Can we still experience duality, but maybe to a slightly smoother? Is that just my personal preference? Maybe that's just my personal preference, and I'm one of billions of us. So there's my 2 Ps. But I'm very curious your thoughts on all of this. If this ramble has made any sense to you, I really appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. And so like the video if you liked it, and do let us know thoughts down below about the content in this video, and hit subscribe if you want more of this content. And if not, have a beautiful day and a beautiful life. And whatever's going on, guys, remember, we have most certainly got this. I love you. Bye.